What if the rain was supposed to ruin the perfect concert night? But instead, it created one of the most unforgettable Jin moments of the entire ARIRANG tour. On August 23rd, something extraordinary happened in Toronto. Thousands of fans had gathered at Rogers Stadium to witness BTS begin the Canadian chapter of their ARIRANG World Tour. They came expecting music. They came expecting spectacular performances. They came expecting to see BTS. But nobody could have predicted just how emotional, dramatic, and unforgettable the night would become. Because as Jin stepped onto the stage, the rain began falling. And it wasn't just a light drizzle. The rain continued coming down throughout the performance, turning the stadium into a completely different world. The lights reflected off the wet stage. The atmosphere became darker and more dramatic. Fans were dealing with the weather around them, and yet somehow, Jin looked like he belonged in the middle of that scene, almost as if the rain had been added specifically to make the moment more cinematic. Jin appeared wearing a white shirt and tie, and there was something almost unreal about the contrast. The dark night, the heavy rain, the bright stage lights, and Jin in white, standing confidently in the middle of it all. For a moment, it didn't even feel like a normal concert. It felt like one of those scenes that fans would later describe again and again. Because Jin wasn't simply standing there looking incredible, he was performing, live, in the rain. And that distinction mattered. Anyone can look perfect in a carefully controlled photo shoot. Anyone can pose under professional lighting. But standing on a huge stage while rain is pouring down and still delivering a passionate live performance is something completely different. The conditions were difficult. The stage was wet. The rain was getting heavier. Yet Jin continued giving the audience everything he had. His voice carried through the stadium while thousands of fans watched him through the rain. And then came another moment that sent the crowd into another wave of excitement. Jin appeared wearing a red bandana. It was such a simple change, but somehow it transformed his entire atmosphere. The white shirt had given him an elegant, almost classic appearance. The red bandana added something completely different. A little more intensity, a little more charisma, a little more of that effortless Jin charm that fans recognize instantly. And the audience reacted. Because when Jin changes even one small detail, fans notice. But there was something much bigger happening beyond the stadium. While the Toronto audience was experiencing the concert in real time, fans around the world were turning the performance into a global trending moment. The hashtag JinInTorontoD1 rose to #1 on Korea's real-time trends on X, formerly known as Twitter. Think about that for a second. The concert was happening thousands of kilometers away in Toronto. But the conversation surrounding Jin had already reached Korea. And it didn't stop there. Mapler Jin in Canada and #JinInTorontoD1 were also trending in the United States and several other countries. So while Jin was standing in the rain in Toronto, people across the world were watching, discussing, sharing, and reacting to the moment. The rain may have surrounded Rogers Stadium, but Jin's presence had clearly gone far beyond it. And perhaps that is what makes this particular performance so fascinating. It wasn't simply about looking good in the rain. It was about the atmosphere Jin created. There was something vulnerable about seeing him perform under those conditions. The weather was uncontrollable. The rain kept coming. And instead of trying to fight the situation, Jin simply continued. He sang, he performed, he smiled, he connected with the audience. And the longer the night continued, the more the rain became part of the memory. Because sometimes the imperfections are exactly what make a concert perfect. If the weather had been completely clear, the night might have been beautiful. But because the rain came down so heavily, everyone experienced something together. The fans were getting wet, the performers were getting wet, the stage was soaked, and yet nobody seemed willing to let the weather take away the happiness of the night. That shared experience created something special between Jin and the audience, and Jin noticed it. During his ending remarks, he looked toward the fans and expressed how touched he was by seeing them smiling and singing along to BTS's songs. That detail might sound simple, but imagine being on stage after an intense performance. The rain is falling harder. You are exhausted. You have just spent hours performing. And when you look into the audience, Instead of seeing people complaining about the weather, you see thousands of smiling faces singing back at you. Of course, that would be emotional. And Jin's words showed that he wasn't simply seeing a crowd. He was seeing the people who had come there specifically to share that moment with him. The fans weren't just watching him, they were participating in the experience. They were singing, they were smiling, they were enduring the rain alongside him. And Jin recognized that. Then came the gesture fans know so well. His trademark hand kiss, a small gesture. But from Jin, it can feel incredibly personal. He offered that final gesture toward the audience as the night approached its end. And then, with the rain still coming down harder, he said something that immediately made fans look forward to the next day. See you tomorrow. Not goodbye, not farewell. See you tomorrow. Those 3 words completely changed the feeling of the ending. Because this wasn't the end of Toronto. It was only day 1. BTS was scheduled to continue the ARIRANG World Tour at Rogers Stadium on August 24th for the 2nd Canadian concert. And suddenly, the rainy night became something even more meaningful. Day 1 had already given fans an unforgettable Jin. The elegant Jin. The passionate Jin. The rain-soaked Jin. The Jin who appeared in a white shirt and tie. The Jin who added a red bandana and sent the stadium into another wave of excitement. The Jin who kept performing even as the rain became heavier. And finally, the Jin who looked toward his fans and thanked them for smiling and singing with him. But there is another side to this story. The fact that Jin's visuals became such a major part of the conversation wasn't surprising. For years, Jin has been celebrated for his striking appearance, often earning descriptions such as the male god of beauty. But what happened in Toronto showed why his appeal goes beyond appearance. Because if this had only been about visuals, the story would have ended with photographs of Jin looking incredible in the rain. Instead, fans were talking about his live performance, his energy, his interaction with the audience, his reaction to the rain, his emotional ending remarks, and the atmosphere he created. That combination is what made the night so powerful. A beautiful face may capture attention, but a genuine connection makes people stay. And Jin seemed to have both. There was also something incredibly symbolic about the rain. Rain is unpredictable. You can't control it. You can't ask it to stop because the concert has started. You can't make the stage dry instantly. You simply have to adapt, and Jin adapted. Rather than allowing the rain to become the problem, he made it part of the story. The wet stage became part of the atmosphere. The rain became part of the memory. The red bandana became part of the visual. The smiles in the audience became part of Jin's emotional memory. And those final words, "See you tomorrow," became the promise that the story wasn't over. For the fans who were actually there, this wasn't simply another concert. Years from now, they may not remember every single song in exact order. They may not remember every transition. They may not remember every stage effect. But they will probably remember the rain. They will remember looking toward the stage. They will remember Jin standing there in the white shirt. They will remember the red bandana. They will remember hearing his voice through the rain. And they will remember that even though the weather became more difficult, the happiness inside Rogers Stadium never disappeared. That's what makes live concerts so special. They don't have to be perfect to become unforgettable. Sometimes the most memorable nights are the ones where something goes completely differently from what everyone expected. And Toronto gave Jin exactly that kind of night. A night when the rain became heavier. A night when the stage became wetter. A night when thousands of fans refused to stop smiling. A night when Jin continued singing with passion. And a night when the entire moment exploded across social media. By the time the concert ended, Jin wasn't simply a performer who had completed another show. He had become the center of a global conversation. Jin in Toronto D1 reached #1 in Korea's real-time trends. Related keywords appeared in real-time trends internationally. Fans were sharing their memories, photos and videos were spreading, and people who weren't even inside Rogers Stadium were suddenly curious about what had happened there. That is the strange power of a truly memorable performance. It begins inside one stadium, then it moves to social media, then to another country, then another. And suddenly a moment that lasted only a few minutes becomes something thousands, or even millions of people can experience together. And Jin's Toronto night had all the ingredients for exactly that. The visuals, the rain, the live vocals, the passion, the red bandana, the fan reactions, the emotional ending. And that unforgettable promise, see you tomorrow. But perhaps the most beautiful part is this. Jin didn't seem to see the rain as an obstacle. He saw the fans. He saw their smiles. He heard them singing. And even while the weather became harsher, he understood that they had chosen to stay there with him. That is why his ending remarks felt so sincere. Because the fans had endured the rain for BTS, and Jin knew it. So in a way, the Toronto concert became a mutual exchange. The fans gave Jin their voices, their smiles, their energy, and their unwavering support. And Jin gave them a performance they could carry home with them. A memory created under the rain. A memory that could never be recreated in exactly the same way. And perhaps that's why the first Canadian night of ARIRANG became so emotional. Because nobody planned for the rain. But nobody will forget it. The night began as a concert. It ended as a story. A story about a superstar standing under a Toronto sky, performing while the rain poured down, while thousands of fans continued singing beside him. And in the middle of all that rain, Jin somehow managed to make the entire stadium feel brighter. Day one was over. But Jin's final words remained in the air. See you tomorrow. And now, the question isn't whether Toronto will remember this night. It almost certainly will. The real question is, what could possibly happen on day two? Because if Jin could turn a night of heavy rain into one of the most talked about moments in Toronto, then perhaps the next chapter of ARIRANG has an even bigger surprise waiting. And one thing is already certain, the rain couldn't hide Jin. It only made the world look closer.